So you've decided to not be useless and potentially dangerous. Good. Today we're going to look at wide knowledge and what you can do by sitting on your ass to actually improve this. But first, let's start with some member berries and a quote. Beautiful words, quite famous and quite misunderstood, but I'm going to come back to that at the end of this video because I want to prove a point. First, take a moment, go back to your childhood, those days spent in front of the TV. Think about the quality of the programming you used to watch. Yes, it was cheaply produced, but we learned social interactions, we learned words, we learned maths, we learned science, we learned geography. We learned about morals and prejudice. We learned about animals. Because children's programming is packed with education, even if it's filtered in. Then we get to adulthood and everything collapses. And we suddenly watch trash TV and potentially terrible sitcoms that have no real value to our brain. But see, feeding the brain is not dissimilar to how you feed your body. You can choose to cake all day, or you can choose the green stuff that might not taste as good, but leaves you feeling healthier and stronger. It's the same with TV programming. And by TV, obviously in the modern age, I very much mean YouTube, podcasts, pretty much everything we consume. It's just very hard to fit that on a thumbnail. But the reality is that several channels, films and series are written by people with deep subject matter knowledge. And while they may not write the show with the intent of educating you, but rather entertaining you, they use these to fill the world, to make the characters more realistic and to even add charm to them. So all of this wealth of knowledge just washes over us if we sit there passively. But what we can do is we can pick up the slack where adult entertainment left us behind in terms of education. And all it takes is when you're watching something and a topic, a piece of context, even a word hits your ears and you're not familiar with it, pause. Open up Google on the side and see what it is. This way you build a very wide but very shallow layer of knowledge. So the next would be unravel the thread. If you find something and it's remotely interesting, go a little bit deeper. So let's say you're expanding your lexicon by watching television, something I've done. I'm not a native English speaker. All of my English was primarily learned from TV. And I used to actively sit and watch shows that used language that I didn't know yet. For instance, Californication, one of my all-time favorite shows. Love the characters, love the writing, but they also used a vocabulary or a lexicon that was beyond my grasp at the time, especially the Hank Moody character. So I would pause the show, I would Google the word, I would see what it means, and then go deeper, go into the etymology of the word, see what cultures it comes from, how it eventually found its way to English. And if you even want to, you can learn a bit more about how the word has transformed throughout the ages, because many words have, right? The way that we use them now is very different to the way they used to be. And in this way, you've unraveled this entire thread of knowledge just from a simple 2-minute pause and read. The other benefit to this is if you dive into learning theory, which I'll touch on in a future video, is as we inquire about knowledge, that recall thread becomes stronger. In other words, if you actively seek out knowledge, it'll be easier for you to recall at a later stage, i.e. your memory around that topic is a little bit sharper. Of course, with this, it's incredibly important to note, TV is not real life. It's not written academically, it makes mistakes. And also, especially if you're watching older content, science shifts in our accuracy of our measurements. We recategorize things, and things that we thought were one way 10 years ago are not that way anymore. So if you want to be the interesting guy at the bar that rambles on about the density of some particular astrological body, perhaps just fact check yourself with up-to-date knowledge. So there it is, a weird little life hack I learned to make TV or media expand your brain and not rot it, as our parents warned us. And then finally, I want to return to that beautiful quote that I had at the start of the video. There is no knowledge that is not power. For the longest time in my life, I thought this was written by the people who developed Mortal Kombat 3, but turns out it was a gentleman named Ralph Waldo Emerson. And Emerson had more to that quote. But the problem is that we in modern society, we've gotten so used to the convenience of amputated knowledge. We read quotes, not books. We listen to vox pops, not conversations. And this is a problem because when knowledge is removed from its source, a lot of context gets lost and it gets amputated from the knowledge. Quotes are lovely if you have already read the book and you need a reminder, or just to make you go, that sounds interesting, I'd like to learn more about it. But a quote is not complete knowledge. And it's important to understand that. And I'm going to use that quote to prove this point. Because you can find an incredible amount of hits the world over from big thought leaders, people that I look up to and am inspired by, who say things like, knowledge is not power, action is power. And the reality is, if you read the full quote, it agrees with you. So let's go to brainly.com, which was the first hit I found with very accurate search description. On the bottom of the second page of Google, I eventually found the full quote. That shows you how hard it is to get to full knowledge these days. The original quote says, "Skill to do comes of doing. Knowledge comes by eyes always open and working hands, and there is no knowledge that is not power." Much deeper context, and very much speaks to the value of action in the original quote. So there you go. Stop listening to amputated knowledge. Find the full source. Read.